and we will be going through the walkthrough today. And we have our wonderful fiscal staff, Ken Stavery, along with Nathan Hopkins from House Research, and they will walk us through the bill. So Mr. Stavery, please present the bill to the committee.
Madam Chair and members, for the record, Ken Savory, House Fiscal Staff. I'm going to share my screen with the spreadsheet to the DE that was posted on the committee website and distributed by Mr. Herring. So I'm going to do that real fast. So Madam Chair, just a couple housekeeping items before I kind of dive into the spreadsheet. Today we'll be speaking mostly about columns E and column F. Columns E of the spreadsheet as well as columns F of the spreadsheet represent the changes within the DE. The other columns on the spreadsheet are columns C and D, which represent the governor's supplemental budget, which the committee heard earlier this session. I'll just start with the top line totals for the agencies within the committee's jurisdiction. Line 6 is the Office of Higher Education. That can be found on the DE on line 1.20. That's $57,469,000 increase in FY23. And then in column F, the tails $117,212,000 for FY24 and 25. Line 7 is the top line total for Minnesota State, which can be found on line 6.23 in the DE. That's a $10 million increase in the FY22-23 biennium, and then $18 million in the FY24-25 biennium. Line 8 is the total for the University of Minnesota. That can be found on line 8.22 in the DE, and that's $32,531,000 in FY22-23, and then $14,788,000 in the tails. The DE on a line 11 is the general fund appropriation. So the total for the DE is $100 million in FY22-23, and then $150 million in FY24-25. We'll skip down and discuss the individual provisions. I'll point out the lines within the DE as appropriate. So starting on line 18 with the Office of Higher Education. Line 19 is the Student Parent Center Grant. This is the governor's change item, can be found on line 1.24 in the DE, and that's $6,925,000 in FY22-23, and then $12,380,000 in FY24-25 in the tails. Skipping down to line 20, our operating expenses for tribal colleges, found on line 2.9 in the DE. That's $3 million in FY23, and then $6 million in FY24-25. Skipping down several lines is the next change item. That's modifications to the state grant on line 23 and found on line 2.18 in the DE. That's $493,000 in FY22-23, and then $18,590,000 in the tails. Line 24 is the underrepresented student teacher grant item, found on line 2.23 in the DE. That's $1.5 million in FY22-23 and $3 million in FY24-25. Skipping down further on the spreadsheet, the next item is on line 26, which is the teacher shortage loan repayment expansion increase. That's $700,000 increase found on line 2.32 in the DE in the FY22-23 biennium, and then $1.4 million in FY24-25. The next is on line 27, which is a change to the emergency assistance for post-secondary students. That can be found on line 3.6 of the DE, and the $731,000 increase in FY22-23 and $1,462,000 in FY24-25. Skipping down further, on line 31 is the next item, which is the hunger-free campus expansion, found on line 3.13 of the DE. That's $200,000 in FY23, and then $400,000 increase in FY24-25. On line 32 are the American Indian scholarships, found on line 3.20 of the bill. That's an increase of $300,000 $3,240,000 in FY23, and then an increase of $6,480,000 in FY24-25. Line 33 is the inclusive higher education grants, to be found on line 3.26 of the bill. That's $750,000 in FY23, and then $750,000 in each fiscal year for a total of $1.5 million in FY24-25. Line 34 is the tuition-free college grants. That's found on line 4.3 of the bill, and that's $29,730,000 in FY23, and then continuing to the tail of $64 million in FY24-25. Line 35 is the Minnesota Reconnect program, found on line 4.25 of the DE amendment, and that's $1 million in FY23, and then $2 million in FY24-25 in the tails. Moving down, there's several one-time items in the bill for operation for the Office of Higher Ed. That starts on line 37, and that is the Addiction Medicine Fellowship, found on line 4.30, and is $1.2 million in FY23 only. And then on line 38 is the Teacher of Color Scholarships Program, which is found on line 5.30, and is $3 million in FY23 only. And then moving down on line 39 is the Social Worker Scholarships, which is found on 6.12 of the DE. And that's $5 million, a one-time appropriation in FY23. That wraps up the Office of Higher Education items. I'll flip over to the next part of the spreadsheet and just move our screen down a bit to cover Minnesota State and the University of Minnesota. The change items for Minnesota State begin on line 44, and that's for campus responsiveness and stabilization. The DE appropriates an additional $6 million in FY23, and then $12 million into the tails of FY24-25. That appropriation can be found on line 6.31 of the DE amendment. Moving down to line 46 are the Mental Health Awareness Program appropriations. That is line 7.3 of the DE amendment, and is $2 million in FY23, and then $4 million in the tails for FY24 and FY25. Moving down further on the spreadsheet is line 47, which is supporting students' basic needs. That is on line 7.13 of the DE amendment, and is $1 million in FY23, and then $2 million in the tails FY24 and FY25. Line 48 is the CTE pilot expansion. That can be found on line 7.29 of the DE amendment, and is $1 million one-time appropriation in FY23. And that concludes the items from Minnesota State. We'll further go down the spreadsheet. On line 52 starts the University of Minnesota changes to appropriations. The first one being on line 54, which is the reduced cost of attendance burden. That can be found on line 8.28 of the DE, and is $6 million in FY23, and then $12 million in FY24 and 25. Moving down further on line 55 is the University of Minnesota Safety and Security Appropriation. That can be found on line 9.3, and is $10 million in FY23, a one-time appropriation. Line 56 is an appropriation from the University of Minnesota for NRRI. That can be found on line 9.26 of the DE amendment, and is $6,881,000 in FY23, and is a one-time appropriation. Line 57 are sustainability improvements at the University of Minnesota. That can be found on line 10.1, and is $7,500,000 in FY23, a one-time appropriation. Then on line 58 is the 50-year clean water plan, found on line 10.15 of the bill, and that is $650,000, a one-time appropriation in FY23. Then on line 59 is the green training program account transfer. That's can be found on 11.6 of the bill, and then is $1.5 million in FY23, and then is $2,788,000 in FY24-25. That concludes the University of Minnesota portion. I'll just point out on line 66 are the various transfers out and in. Members may recognize them from the larger spreadsheet that tracks transfers between the general fund and special revenue funds per directions of the bill. And this is just tracks the transfer of the green training account program that I just discussed from the general fund going to be deposited into the special revenue fund. And Madam Chair, that concludes the spreadsheet. I would turn it over to Mr. Hopkins to discuss the policy portions of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Savory. We will now turn it over to our research chair, not our research chair, our research from the House, which is Nathan Hopkins. Please begin.
Madam Chair and committee members, this is Nathan Hopkins from House Research. I'm going to discuss Articles 2 and 3 of the DE, which contain policy items. Article 2 starts on page 11 of the DE. I'll run through section by section. Section 1 on page 11, this deals with the hunger-free campus grants. It was House File 3933. It adds private nonprofit institutions to the list of institutions that can receive those grants. On pages 12 and 13 of the DE, this is from House File 3892. It deals with required sexual harassment and violence policies. Section 2 on page 12 requires an affirmative consent standard within post-secondary institutions policies. This language has changed somewhat since the committee last heard this bill. Especially members might want to look at page 12, lines 27 through 29, which says that the affirmative consent standard required under this section has to incorporate all the elements of consent that's defined in section 609.341, which is a criminal statute. And section 3, also on the sexual harassment and violence policy topic, this is the training portion. This has also been changed slightly. The previous version of the bill that the committee heard deleted a required training on consent as defined by that criminal statute. That's no longer deleted, so the school will be training on both consent as defined by the criminal statute as well as the affirmative consent standard added under section 2. Section 4 of Article 2 begins on page 14 of the DE. This is the Inclusive Higher Education Technical Assistance Center. It establishes the center within the Office of Higher Education, and the center's primary mission is to increase access to higher education for students with intellectual disabilities. The second part, which is from that same bill, House File 4210, Section 5 is on page 17 of the DE, and this is the Inclusive Higher Education Grant Program. It creates a grant program to assist higher education institutions with creating or expanding post-secondary programs for students with intellectual disabilities. Section 6 begins on page 20 of the DE. This is from House File 4449. It's the Free College Grant Program. This creates a new grant program for students enrolled at state colleges, so two-year institutions, min-state two-year institutions, and it would cover any remaining cost of tuition and fees, subject to a sliding scale based on the recipient's reported family income. There's been a little bit of a change since the committee last heard the underlying bill language here. You can see that change on page 21. The change is how the sliding scale of family adjusted gross income works. The tranches used to be much larger. Now they proceed in 5% increments. So the award gets smaller as a student's reported family adjusted gross income grows. Section 7 is on page 22 of the DE. This is the state grant program. It's decreasing the assigned student responsibility from 50% to 48% of the institution's cost of attendance. Section 8 is also on page 22. This is one of the governor's proposals. It creates a new grant program to assist students who are parents or expected parents. Section 9 begins on page 23 of the DE amendment. Sections 9 and 10 are both affecting the American Indian scholarships. Section 9 removes a requirement that undergraduate students have to be Pell eligible in order to receive an Indian scholarship. And section 10, which is on page 24 of the DE, increases maximum award amounts for undergraduate students from $4,000 to $8,000 per academic year, and maximum grants for graduate students from $6,000 to $8,000 per academic year. On page 25, section 11, this is also from the governor's bill. It affects the teacher shortage loan repayment program. It increases the maximum amount of loan repayment from $1,000 to $2,000 per year. Section 12 and section 13 both address Min-State's request. On section 12, beginning there on page 25, this requires the board to pursue additional centralized mental health resources to benefit students. And section 13, which is on page 27, at the very top of page 27, this requires centralized basic needs resources to students. Beginning on page 27, these are a number of changes that were in House File 2578, which Representative Schultz carried. There was a large DE amendment that this committee heard and voted on. These changes are what were contained in that DE amendment to House File 2578. So they affect the way that the legislature goes about electing regents and the composition of the Board of Regents. Beginning on page 27, section 14, this provides that the legislature should elect a tenured faculty member and a representative of a university labor organization to 2 of the board's 3 unassigned at-large seats. It also provides that 1 member shall be a member of a recognized Indian tribe in Minnesota. Section 15 begins at the bottom of page 27. This amends existing law to address how redistricting or the gain or loss of a congressional district in Minnesota will affect the requirement that at least 1 member of the Board of Regents be a resident of each congressional district. Section 16 imposes a 2-term limit on regents that's on page 28 of the DE. Also on page 28, these changes affect the composition of the Regent Candidate Advisory Council, which recruits and screens candidate applicants to be university regents. It changes the current composition and requires that the RCAC consist of 25 members, 5 appointed by the House, 5 by the Senate, 5 current faculty members appointed by the faculty senates, the 5 student body presidents from each campus, and 5 designees from the listed councils. Beginning on page 29, this affects the RCAC's duties. It eliminates a provision that indirectly prohibits RCAC from imposing any kind of term limits, because section 16 of the DE does impose 2-term limits on regents. Section 19 begins on page 30 of the DE. This affects regent nomination and election. It requires the Joint Legislative Committee for regent nomination to nominate 2 rather than 1 candidates for each vacancy on the board. And at the Joint Convention to elect regent, it prohibits floor nominations. On page 31 of the DE, section 20 of Article 2 is the Green Training Program for training employees of the University of Minnesota. On page 33 of the DE, this is also addressing hunger-free campus grants. This amends the last year's Budget Act to clarify that nonprofit private post-secondary institutions can receive those hunger-free campus grants. At the very top of page 34, this is a very short section addressing the Aspiring Teachers of Color pilot program, because this bill, the DE, adds some additional funding to that program, and that funding remains available until June 30th, 2027. This sets an expiration for that pilot program at that same date, June 30th, 2027. Also on page 34, this is section 23 of Article 2. This is a social work scholarship program for students preparing to become licensed social workers in Minnesota. This was in Representative Winkler's House File 3581. And on page 36, section 24, this is also from Representative Schultz, DE, to House File 2578. This requests the Board of Regents to amend their policies so that a compensated university employee can serve as a regent, since this suite of changes also includes a requirement that a sitting university faculty member be a regent. Article 3 of the bill, this is the Office of Higher Education's agency bill, which this committee has previously heard. It was introduced as House File 3672, and it contains various administrative changes, technical changes to the Office of Higher Education's programs and regulations. Madam Chair, if any of the committee members have any questions for me or Mr. Savory, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins.